money. Never far from our thoughts. So why is it when someone talks about finances, we get heavy eyelids, fall asleep, and dream of what we'd do if we were rich? In this podcast series, Kent Tilley does his best to make us yawn with laughter as he delves into gut-busting topics like debt consolidation, asset management, taxation, and budgeting. Still awake? Good. No matter your income level, you will certainly learn something from this series. However, the focus is on underserved low and middle income Canadians who struggle with monthly cash flow and can't get quality advice because they can't afford to access it. In each episode, Kent interviews experts who specialize in helping people get back on their financial feet and get on track. He'll break it down step by step and demystify the process of taking control of your money. If Kent can figure it out, it can't be that hard. Trust me, I've seen him try and fold a fitted sheet.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode
6
of the Kids in the Will podcast. I'm really excited about today. I know you can hear that in my voice. I get to talk to a very old friend of mine. When we started chatting before this, we probably haven't seen each other in 15 years. Really good buddies in high school and obviously still friends on Facebook. And I reached out to him because I had seen some of the stuff he was doing with building these tiny homes out of sea cans, basically for, I didn't even know, but I knew that it was something that I wanted to talk to him about. And it sounds like a really interesting project, really interesting society on the island in Courtenay, BC. So really excited to hear more about it. Please welcome Pat Davis.
Hey, everybody. So like Kent said, old time friends, haven't seen each other in a long time, and I'm really excited to be here and tell everyone a little bit about what I'm doing here on the island. I run the construction side of a society called the WeCan Shelter project, and we, as Kent was saying, we take shipping containers. They're 20 feet by 8 feet wide, which is a very small space, works out to about 170 square feet. And we build a home. We build a very small home for a person in need. We target the really hard to home, the people right off the street who are, struggling with all of the things that comes along with that, the addiction problems, the mental health problems, everything that comes with it. And we believe that the first step to creating a better life for yourself and getting out of that kind of situation is having a safe place to go home and shut the door and be warm and safe and get a good night's sleep. And there's a whole facet to all of the things involved in a person turning their life around or getting into a better situation. But, we believe that's one of the biggest first steps and probably one of the hardest ones to overcome, which we'll probably talk a lot about today.
Right.
So that's that. And in addition to that, I also am the operations manager for a company that builds tiny homes in the luxury market. So the exact opposite of that. And I'll probably try and plug that in here a little bit too, because there's some wealthy guy that would be upset with me if I didn't, put a little plug in there for the company. So.
Of course, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is there's money making ventures, and then there's ventures that are trying to help, and I mean that's sort of my side of the business too. It's like, well, I need to pay the bills, but.
Mm-hmm.
You want to focus on some of the problems you see. And I think it's very interesting that, when you talk about getting somebody into a safe space, into a place, and I watched a documentary on Netflix a few weeks ago about the homeless problem in the United States. And every single one of them was like, what do you need the most? And every single homeless person said, I need a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're living in these situations where, it's unsafe. There's a whole bunch of drug use, there's crime, there's sexual assault, there's, a regular assault, all of these things. Well, how are you going to get ahead? How do you have no chance?
You spend all your time thinking about protecting the little that you have,
Right.
Or yourself. And in a lot of cases, that's all you get left with is, this shirt on your back, and that's it.
Right.
So, one of the things that I definitely wanted to cover here is that one of the reasons why this is so important to me is it's a word that I hate, and I think is really overused. And that's because, I'm a cis white male in my mid 40 years old. So I would hate it. But, privilege is a thing. And I did everything in my life I could possibly do to end up homeless. I got addicted to drugs. I got addicted to alcohol. I was terrible with money, even though I did a pretty good job of making plenty of it. I made decision after decision after decision. And, in a few cases, I did end up spending a couple months in the winter in Edmonton in the backseat of my car. But I am so incredibly fortunate to have come, born into a family, no fault, no, luck of the draw or whatever, that were able to weather that storm and stuck with me. And they shouldn't have. My mom's an ex-cop. I'm an ex-drug dealer.
Right.
And not a very successful one, I might add. And for whatever reason, I got lucky enough to be born into a situation that barely managed to stick it out with me until I finally found the pieces, and I'm still working on that. But it's relatively even kind of recent in the last 5 years that I really caught my stride in that department. But every decision I made throughout my 20s and even in my early 30s should have landed me on the streets or in jail. And I can't imagine what my life would have looked like if I wasn't as fortunate as I have been in that department. So, and they're really extreme, like that. I should be in that situation, and I'm not. So now that I'm a little bit older and starting to really, get all these pieces of my life sorted out and my feelings and all of that stuff, it became an opportunity arose to give back. And part of that giving back is part of that healing process for me. And I should also say that, I didn't start this initiative, but I was there when the person who did start it said, I want to do something. And I just said, well, I build things, so let's figure this out. And we did that. And 3 years later, we've managed to not only fundraise for 8 tiny homes that we've built from scratch. So that's more than 8 people that have been in and out of those homes along the way. But they cost us on average, about $25,000 per home. That's with an inside and outside space. We have no government funding whatsoever. We have been trying, but it's all been through the generosity of donations of businesses and people around the Comox and Courtenay Valley here. And that's 8 homes. It's $200,000 that we've raised privately and put all of that back into homes for the community. And we'll talk a little bit about the success stories that have come from that along the way as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's been 3 years you guys have been doing that?
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah.
And so, I mean, one of the things we touched on before, and I mean, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, being an open book, and I mean, I guess that explains a little bit why we haven't seen each other in 15 years, because there was, I had maybe heard rumors or whatever and I agree wholeheartedly. I talk about this all the time. If you don't have privilege with today, you're not getting into a home.
Mhm.
Not in a lot of places around the country, and the island is no exception because the weather there is the best in the country, and the money isn't there. But if I was homeless, that is where I would move. Um,
Yeah.
I would find a way to get to BC because the weather's not as bad as it is here. I don't know how homeless people survive here, but I notice even every day or every summer in my community, when I grew up here, never saw a homeless person in my entire life. But
Mhm.
now there will be homeless people walking through our neighborhood every day and
Mhm.
living in the ravine in tents and all of these other things. And that means that the problem is worse. So, I guess maybe touch on just from visualizing, seeing the problem firsthand. Um, is it worse?
Is it worth it? Well, I mean, it's worth it for me. The, I mean, we talked about that. We talked a lot about the weather and how, one of the arguments that I was coming up against with regular people online, was that, well, Pat, if you keep building these homes and giving them away to people, all the homeless people are going to come. And I said, they're already coming because who wants to live for 8 months in the winter in Edmonton in a tent? And there's only so many shelters and there's only so many beds in those shelters. So most of the people that can even get to a shelter in time to get in won't get in a day. They might get a meal, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll be out on the streets overnight. And then you've spent all day trying to figure out how to, one, eat, two, not die, three, not be assaulted, and then you've got to figure out how to get you and all of your worldly possessions into some method of transportation to get you to that shelter in time to be there to get in. Like, I'm a pretty resourceful guy and I have no idea how the hell I would manage that,
No.
and you got to do that every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you got to do that. So how are you going to spend, like, what time in the day do you think you're spend formulating your grand plan about how you can get out of this situation? You're going to get that, that first few bucks and get in. Like, no, you're trying to, you're trying to survive, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're thinking about. Um, so anyway, I started building these homes. We built them. We take 40-foot shipping containers. We cut them in half. We make two. There's a bed, a shower, a small, a kitchen sink, a toilet, all of those things. So you can come home, lock your door, get warm, have a shower, and make some food, and lock up your stuff. And then you
Right.
gotta go. Still gotta go out the next day. You gotta pay some rent. You've got to go out. You've got to, do the things you need to do to survive in our situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at least you have that. And, it's a big problem when you look at it. The other argument I have is like, okay, well, you're addressing this housing market, but what about the drugs and what about the mental health? And I go, yep, those are things. It is one big giant problem. Like everything today, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot hyper focus in on one part of it and then say, well, you're only doing this part, the rest of it won't work. That's right. You do have to address all of those issues. You
Mm-hmm.
absolutely do if you're going to solve the bigger problem. But how can I? And how can anyone? I build houses. I'm not a grief counselor and I'm not good with my own fucking feelings. And I have a therapist, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So and I go to addictions counseling as well on top of that and AA meetings and everything else. So, but I can't do this one part. So I'm going to do that one part and I'm going to open up the opportunity for that next part and
Right.
let the people who know how to do that do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think it's important to remind yourself that no one person is going to solve any of the world's problems. It takes a group of people working together and saying, okay, I'm good at this, so I'm
Yeah.
going to work on that. And if what you do opens some doors for me over in my department, then great. And eventually, maybe we all combine together, maybe we don't. In our case, we don't because it's just too complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get this one big step made, and then that opens up the doors for all these other people to come in. Because, like, if you need counseling and you're on the street, like heavy count, or you need a regular doctor or a regular prescription, or even just access to federal whatever. How do you do that if you can't even get mail?
Mm-hmm.
How does your counselor find you? Like, really, like front end homelessness workers spend as much time just trying to find people. Where are they?
Right.
Like going out into the streets, and like you said, they're intense in the woods. They don't want to be found when they're in there. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
mostly what happens is people kick them out,
Right.
right? So they're trying to stay out of your line of sight, and there's just so many people and so little space to hide in from people anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that they're just constantly getting moved around and forced to move around. So now,
Right.
okay, now your day has gone from, man, I want to get some sleep and try and get my shit together and be productive, to, oh, pack up everything you own again, a couple times a day sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
find a new spot where you might be able to get a couple hours of peace and quiet and set up. But you got to set up. And like, have you ever put up a tent? Well, taking it down is a lot harder, and moving it around is really hard. Now, I've never gone camping without a vehicle, you know,
Right.
like how do you do it? So, anyway, my mother was a president in a Rotary Club around here at the time, and a presenter came in and said some other very real things that you'll find interesting. Like, for instance, in the Comox Valley, every homeless person costs the taxpayer 180 grand a year. And that's when you will factor in the fact that they're sleeping in doorways, and they're security guards, and they're at businesses and libraries and public spaces that are shooing these people away. And there's cleanups, and there's bathrooms that people won't use because the homeless people are in there. And there's
Mm-hmm.
damage, and there's crime, and there's counseling, and there's time trying to find them. And all of that money adds up. So if you spend the 25 grand once and give them a home,
Mm-hmm.
huge amounts of that problem go away. Like,
Well,
right
even
out the
if you
door.
took half of that,
Yeah,
90 grand, that would
yeah.
be unbelievable, right? Like,
And that is per homeless person every year. So if you're worried about me ever getting federal funding to do this job, let me tell you, I'm gonna save you some money,
right.
big time. Like, give me
Uh-huh.
that money to do this, and your taxes will go down and not up
Right.
overall. But
Or be used for something that is going something else.
yeah, or yeah, exactly. Yeah, plug it into the healthcare system. Yeah, you're right. You're never going to get it back because those
Or you're
greedy
right. They're
motherfuckers.
not going to drop our tax.
Yeah, but
Listen, Pat, they're not going to say,
yeah,
yes, okay, we save money here, so let's
yeah,
pass it back to
yeah,
let's
absolutely.
pass it back to these
Fuck.
guys.
Oprah Winfrey, everybody gets a car.
Right.
Like, no fucking way. But but the money is available to go to other products and programs. And you guys especially, like, maybe you could drive on a level surface again for like 10 minutes,
Right.
instead of like the rocky road pothole world that you live in back there.
Yeah, well, no, they seem to be pumping money into construction to keep things going, or something. I don't know where they get the money, but
Yeah,
that's a whole other topic. So,
yeah.
uh, where where do you put these? How does somebody get into one of these? Like, who? How do you decide who gets to live there? How long do they have? All of these things.
So again, that falls into the board at our society. And I'm not that type of person. I've been in construction since I was 14, and I'm pretty good at it. I think I can say that nowadays without feeling too bad about it. So there's a group of people that work with other homelessness societies around town, those frontline workers for people that they think that, you know, can make it in and have a chance where they're at today to, if they just had this home, maybe it'll work out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can get to the next step. And in a lot of cases, maybe they can't, but they can stay in the home forever once they're in. So I think what we do, we're really fortunate here in Courtenay specifically because what we have is a small town. I think there's 45,000, 50,000 population with the Comox, Cumberland, and Courtenay. Beautiful setting, beautiful weather, and we had a campground that was close to the city center downtown, which everything is in a town that size, but and it had fallen kind of the wayside where more and more people had moved in there and become permanent residents because the housing market is what it is. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but it's extreme here. So more and more people are being forced into campers. And then a few years go by and they're still in that camper and it's starting to deteriorate around them. And this campground was kind of turning into a big long-term living space. And one street of that campground was really, really bad. Like we put in one CCAN where we just moved the guy out of his camper and into a CCAN directly. Is that guy had been living in that camper 17 feet, no running water, no working plumbing. And he had lived in that space for 17 years.
What?
And, yeah. 17 years he has been living in that camper with no water and no plumbing. And basic electricity, 2 circuits. So we swapped them out to a space that's one has real walls and insulation in it and can stay a temperature that a human being can live in comfortably and has plumbing and has water, and the quality of life just skyrocketed for them. And so we're taking people that are already in this campground, and we're taking people directly from the streets and putting them into CCANs as fast as we can build them, which right now is about 6 to 8 weeks, but we're working 1 day a week on Saturdays with volunteers. So you scale that up. If the right amount of outside assistance came knocking on my door and we could factory pump these things out, of course the price would go way up if you're paying people to build them, but I think we could have one of these a week done.
Right.
And that's a bigger discussion, but right now we go out, we raise as much money until we can afford one of these CCANs. Right now we've got a pretty good head of steam, so we're a little ahead of the game right now, but and we're building 2 as we speak at the same time. And then we put them together. So there's been a few interesting stories. We've been nearly shut down by the constituency a couple of times. We've applied for every government grant that we can think of, got none. We've had city inspectors come through and try and shut us down for not creating the proper permitting paperwork. And we've, which wouldn't matter if you looked at it because they're all built to standard, but either way, we're bypassing that process by being so small and identifying a problem. And the city has mostly, in our case, conveniently turned a blind eye to it because they know we're solving an issue. And if they get their hands on it and add their red tape to it, then they know they're gonna ruin it. So right now, they just kind of ignore it, which works for me.
Sure.
Yeah. So
makes it a little easier for now.
Yeah. So that project, it runs, like I said, it's 100% volunteer. My mother started it about 3 years ago. I took over the construction and design side of things. And It is a complete nonprofit. We are not employees. I have a regular job that I go to every day. She's retired, but there's I would say about 90% of it is volunteer labor that goes into that. There are a few specialty trades that we have to still hire and pay. Most of them give us a really big break, but
Nice.
yeah. So it would be a stretch to say that any regular old person could build one of these for that price. But if you're doing the work and you're getting some breaks here and there, you could be pretty close. Nonetheless,
Nice.
yeah. So that's what we're doing. We had quite a few struggles with. Then obviously the world went the way that it did, and COVID happened, and then that was really when the doors started opening for us with that project, because in Victoria, they have the problem is much more exaggerated there. If you've been to Victoria, it's a beautiful city. There's all these beautiful parks. Downtown kind of funnels right down to the bay. It's just this sort of magical place. But
So nice. Yeah.
yeah, but all these parks are filled completely with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tents. So they decided that they wanted these spaces back for whatever reason, and COVID happened, and you couldn't have this density of people that were not really getting the health assistance that they needed. So they started moving them into hotel rooms. When they did that, they committed a certain amount of tax dollars to renovating that room when that person left. It's a big number. It's about what one of these sea cans cost. But anyway,
Each room.
So, and that's
and I know I'm so glad you brought that up, because nobody really knew, but
yeah,
hotels in Edmonton were full
yeah,
of homeless people.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, these people, these are people who don't necessarily know how to take care of a home. They don't have that skill set.
Right.
So they had to commit this amount of money to renovate that room back into a hotel room. So that money is gone forever, and all you've done is temporarily assisted in a problem, and then left it exactly the way that it was when you started, except for
now they don't have shelter.
Plus you've taken 25,000 bucks out of the tax market and given it to a business owner, and they're renovating those rooms, and the money continues to flow in a big circle of garbage. But
right. Yeah.
At the same time, so there was fires happening, people smoking and falling asleep, and rooms being destroyed, and buildings being really, really greatly damaged. And at the same time, we moved our very first CCAN. We moved a lady in who had been homeless in the valley since I believe 2006. She had been in there, and this is 3 years ago. So over a decade living on the streets. We moved her in, and she was really happy. And about 10 months later, she passed away in the unit. It was a mysterious circumstances. It looked like it was maybe somebody came in there and was invited in, and they had an issue. Anyway, so she passes away. And that's a sad story. But what ended up happening is we went in there to clean up and try and get somebody else in, and where the hotel room would be a 25,000 plus renovation to put that next person in. We spent $1,400, and a week later, we had a new person in that unit. And then all of a sudden, all of these constituencies, pardon my, anyway, the word I was going for. It's a
hard word to say.
Yeah. They went, oh, okay, well, hold on here. We need to look at this model a little bit closer, because the $1,400 to clean up the place and bring it back to new standards for a new person to move in, and you still have the structure and you still have the home, is a huge difference than just giving that money to renovate a hotel room. And I get it, like limited options, not a lot of ideas going around, or not a lot of ideas being tried, or I don't know. But
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, there's so much that goes into it. The problems are so immense that it's like, you're right. Like, people are like, well, you didn't solve this. I'm like, well, I'm only doing one part. I'm one human being in one small group. And if we all found a way to work together, it can be better. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know, it can be better. We live in what I consider to be the greatest country in the world, people that care, you know, but it's a stressful time. And so we don't know, right? Like, and everybody's trying to look out for themselves because we're all stressed, right? Housing I was talking earlier about being like, even though Edmonton is named one of the most affordable cities in Canada, and our incomes are higher than, generally speaking, most other places in the country, my wife and I both have good jobs, and it's not like we're having the easiest financial time out there. And that's with two of us working all the time and only one child, like, and that's like two fairly well educated people that have been working for a long time. And so it's harder and harder, and we had a leg up. I mean, her dad was a lawyer. My dad was a doctor. I mean, we were privileged, just like you said in the very beginning, right?
Yeah. And that problem is coming to a head. It has to, like, where I am in Courtenay, which is 4 hours, 2 hours by land and 2 hours by sea to get to Vancouver, where the problem is insane. You know, we're closer to that market, so we don't have the wages that Edmonton has, not even close. If I had to make up a guesstimate number, I would say it's somewhere near 50% of what young people make compared to Edmonton. But the interesting part about it is that a house costs about double as much here. So, you know, our old shitty Comox boxes, they're called, which is your old Edmonton neighborhood. Every city has them, where those old 60s, 50s, and 60s houses with 6 floor plans and 1,000 square feet. Nothing to them. Those houses here are worth $750,000 on a quarter-acre lot, and there's, you know, they're not worth that, but that's what people have to pay for them to get them here. So now, if you have a great job in, you know, West Coast BC, you might make 80 grand.
80, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that is a really high paying job here. And for that person will never, ever save the money to get a home, because on top of that, the rental market is insane. So to get into a 900 square foot 2-bedroom apartment in this town with no pets, you're looking at $1,800 to $2,200 a month. That's rent plus utilities. So about $3,000 a month after, you know, you're said and done by the time you have everything you need. And at 80 grand a year, that's like 70% of your net income, right? So you're not saving money for a house. No effing way.
Of course not.
Anybody that tells you to stop drinking Starbucks should put that Starbucks right up their tailpipe, because that is just ridiculous.
Right. I mean, you can't budget your way into saving that much money when you're like, and food prices have gone up 10%, you know, so it's, well, there's nothing left. Gas. What's gas on the island?
Today it is $2.32 a liter.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, holy crap.
Yeah. The other day I filled up my truck, and the maximum debit amount, I have an F-150. The maximum debit is $250, which is up from last year at
Yeah.
$200, and
Mhm.
I can't fill my truck with one tank of gas at that number. I have to do I have to do two transactions
I have
to
the
fill up
same.
my stupid F-150.
I have the same truck. The tank is so huge. I'm like, it lasts a long time.
Yeah, not for me, not at all. Like
Well,
I'm doing it. I'm doing that twice a week right now.
oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you drive for work more than I do. So
yeah,
I
it's
but
insane.
yeah,
But
so I mean the affordability crisis around the country, and we don't really see it that much in Edmonton, uh, because it is more affordable, and there is the oil and gas sector that provides jobs. There's a lot of small businesses that do well, a lot of the time that can pay fairly well, um, and houses aren't as expensive
and you still
rented,
have the problem.
of course.
Yeah.
Right. And it gets worse. It's visibly worse. So I guess my question for you on that is, is it visibly worse? How long have you been there? Or do you see how much worse it is every year, or is it still sort of maintained, or?
Well, it's absolutely worse. So, like, I mean, there's so many problems to talk about here, and this is going to sound a little crass, but our homeless population numbers are growing almost exponentially. But there's another crisis going around, particularly in BC, which is a really toxic drug supply, which is about the only thing curtailing that whole problem. Is that so many people are dying in drug addiction right now that it's probably the only thing keeping the numbers even remotely manageable, which is insane to say. Like,
Right. That's just crazy. That's mine. That's the most stressful thing I've potentially ever heard, but I have heard that before.
yeah, and it's getting everybody. Like your recreational cocaine user, you need to be concerned if you're having drugs in the West Coast, BC right now, because you may OD. And those guys are really in trouble because they tend to be the ones that haven't taken their drugs to a toxic drug testing place or, a connect center because they're at a party or whatever, and nobody's carrying naloxone. And and even if you are carrying naloxone and somebody has an OD, that might not even work because they've got they're spiking the drugs with it starts with a B. I can't remember, but it basically makes the what's going to save your life not work. So the naloxone doesn't work anymore. Anyway, um, so people are dying left, right, and center with a toxic drug supply, and nobody can own a home. Average cost of rent is insane, and most of those places are full anyway. So you're getting on a waiting list. Like we cannot produce enough rentals to meet the market, and even if we did, the demand is just so high, and the cost is just so high. And while you're doing that, the costs are going up to build the things, and that gets transferred on.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the big picture, it's far too complicated for a guy like me, but I do think that, people need to stop saying trickle down economics. They need to say trickle up economics. That's what we do. That is actually a better description of what the world is that we live in today. And the money and the money is like we all know it. The rich are getting insanely wealthy, and the poor are getting insanely poor. But the middle guys, the guys that are, that believe that they're in the middle, you're going down too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going down with that ship. We're both going down with that ship. And those people are slowly being forced into that poverty category.
Mm-hmm.
And by now, you know, that's a big financial sort of shitty question about how the world operates at its core and money. And I don't want to talk about it because I don't know enough about it. But what I do know is if it keeps going this way, like the world has to change. People have to do something differently. And, we were talking before that, in my opinion, if you're 18 to 40 today, that if you're in that age bracket today and you don't own a home, in my opinion, if you can find the time, working your ass off trying to get it into a space where you can own a home, if you can find the time in there, get down to your city council meetings and ask them what they're doing about affordability in this market. Ask them what kind of new construction standards that they're setting. Like in 2021 in Courtney, we adopted. Did I say this, or was that in the prequel?
No, that was
okay. Yeah. So in 2021, Courtney adopted the Step 3 code for residential homes, which is to say they now have to meet a much higher energy efficiency rating. And everybody says, well, you know what? Good. The house is going to be warmer. It's going to be more efficient, more energy efficient. That's going to be good for global warming, which it is, no question. But with that, the cost of your exterior walls went up about 50% on every single house, minimum. And your heating types have changed and they've become more expensive. And then you're going to talk and they're going to say, well, people are going to use these products more and more. Demand will catch up to the market and they'll end up costing the same as everything else. And that's when in your life have you gone and seen something go down in price? Like it happens at these yes, pens are cheaper than they used to be, but houses are 3 times as much.
Right.
They're not going down. So when the city goes, oh yeah, well, we're gonna add in these new standards and everybody's gonna build a better house. Okay, sure. Who's paying for it? You are.
Right.
I am. We all are. And on top of that, it gets worse. And again, it's an opinion, not my expertise.
I like opinions.
Yeah. So I started paying attention at that point because it affected my business, and anything that affects my business is going to get my attention, and usually in a way like I'm going to bulldog my way through this. So I can get around it. It's usually how my brain works. It's like I'm going to find a loophole and I'm going to open it up real wide. But I started paying attention, and then what I noticed is in a separate conversation, they were talking about the city's tax credits and how the overall city energy efficiency had allowed them to have this surplus of tax credits for environmental efficiencies. So now they have all this government money coming in because they've set the standard over here, and they've got these tax credits. Well, what do they do with the tax credits? They sold them to other cities so that their less efficient system could balance their books. And it's fake money that they're passing around. So they're taking money out of your pockets. They're not calling it taxes. They're calling it standards and energy efficiency under the guise of global warming. And don't get me wrong, I totally believe in global warming. We have to fix that too. But like, what they've done is they've hidden something really ugly under the guise that they're trying to solve a problem, and compounded another problem, and then went, well, we don't know. It's too big of a problem, but they knew what they did. They absolutely, they may not understand exactly how it's connected, but it's not complicated. And if I can fucking figure it out, I guarantee you they did.
Right.
Because I'm not anything special in the figuring out market. And without getting too conspiracy theory, it's I assume that's happening everywhere. It's not the
well,
first
it is
time
a big. That was the biggest way that Tesla and Elon Musk, the first time they made a profit was through this selling of credits and
carbon tax credits,
something that he had never made money. It wasn't a profitable business, but there was a way to use the credits to their advantage to balance the books. And it's like, wait, how all of a sudden is that become one of the most valuable companies on the planet when it hasn't actually
Yeah. And
made a
it's
profit.
fake. It is fake money, but it's real consequences, right? And
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is most governments, most everything is band-aid solutions for real problems, pass it down the road, kick it down the road where the real solutions are long-term planning, real thought processes into how this can be better, not tomorrow, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And that's why I love what you're doing, because you guys are going out of your way, using your spare time to make a real difference, and we need more people like that.
well, you know what? I don't think we need more people like that. I think that, like, in general, as a population, I think we're generally really good people,
Of
most of
course,
us.
yeah.
And most of us in times like these, I think we're just trying to do the best we can by the people closest to us, and then what we have left over, we generally do give. That that's not a lot anymore.
Right.
There's just not that much. I'm fortunate in my career's in a good place, and I push myself pretty hard to do all this stuff, but that's who I am. If I'm one of these guys that's going to retire and die the next day and know it. Um, but the the thing about that is, I'm glad you used the Band-Aid thing, because what I'm doing, what this society doing, is another Band-Aid, and everybody should know that I know we know that, like we're solving a small portion of a big problem, and not even solving it. We're
Helping.
we're a drop in that bucket, but we're doing what we can.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the big picture, the how do we fundamentally change and shift the way that we run this country and the world into a more sustainable system? Because what we have now is headed for disaster. In fact, I would say that the first sort of stones down the road, where you're gathering moss and that problem's getting bigger and bigger and bigger till it's so big that there's no stopping it. I would say we're well into that now. Like, we're gaining and gaining. It's not quite the boulder that's going to run people down, but we're well into it. The process has started, and it's the beginning of the end of this market style and this method of managing mortgages and homes and investment money and banking, and you know but um that's not something that I even understand in the slightest way. Like, so what I do understand is how to build homes, and how to build good homes, and how to build homes cheaply. um and So I'm going to use that to my advantage, and anybody out there that's got a little bit of extra time and energy, um, or maybe just a few extra bucks, and that's all you can do, or whatever, like, get involved, go down and holler some crazy shit at your local government, like, just start finding out what you can do if you can. And if you can't,
Mm-hmm.
if your nose is to the grindstone and you're just trying to make shit work, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, uh, find a place where your mental health is in the best place you can get it, and then see what you have left for other people. And I think we're all doing the best we can to keep, be good parents and be good sisters and brothers and mothers and all of that stuff. And at the end of the day, there's not always a lot left over for other people. But I think, you know, um, when it all washes out at the end, and you're looking back at your life, like, what did you do for other people? For most of us, that's all we got. That's all we're going to have to measure, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because you can't take money with you. Um, but you can certainly make a change. You can certainly
Make
help
an
other people.
impact for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and that's not why. After all that, that's not even why I got into this position. I got in because I saw a person close to me trying to solve a problem and not knowing how to go about it. So I said, no, here's a method,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll help you with that because that's what I know how to do. And 3 years later, I'm still doing it, and I love the project. And now I'm doing it because I know I'm helping people, and that is worth all of those hours and late nights and extra hours where I was stressed out for, to know that there's at least a few people out there that are in a better place because a whole bunch of us came together to help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's one big part of it. The other part is what direction are we really headed as a group, as a society, like especially in Canada? What are your children going to be walking into? And like, are they ever going to afford a home? And if they can't afford a home, are you okay with where that money is going? Like, are you okay with the fact that maybe 8 people own most of the real estate in your city? Or well, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, depends on the city. But you know, there's a few rich people that own most of the rental market in any given town, and they're all of that money goes to them, and they live very comfortable lives. And while they're maximizing their rent to points where your kids and your friends and family are just scraping by to get rent, forget putting any money away for getting a better life. Put that, you know, like, are you okay with just handing that money? Because you might, you
Right.
basically just gave birth to slaves and then said, well, that's the market. If you work real hard and get a good job and go to school, you're going to get a job, you're going to get into a house and blah, blah. Man, wake up. That is not the world we live in. You can go to school, you can get a great job, you can get a great career, and you ain't getting a house necessarily. That is not enough in today's world. And it's because we've mismanaged this problem to the point where it's come and gone. We need to relook at how we do this. And
Couldn't agree
and
more.
yeah. And it's like you said, we're headed for something, and it's probably not going to be very good, at least to start with. But if there was the whole great reset that people were talking about recently, you can apply that in a lot of different ways. There's, the 200-year empire. You can read about that, where every empire lasts about 194 years before it absolutely shitters itself. And the American empire is at 195 or 205 or whatever it is. So those people who have read that book are going like, any minute now, this thing's going to implode, and maybe it will, but and maybe it won't. But in some ways, it has to. We absolutely need to figure out how to make the American dream a reality and
Mm-hmm.
an option again, because right now it's got to be 1 in 1,000 that are making it, like, or whatever. It is really a dream in the sense that it's one of those dreams that your kids may not be able to really have. Like, winning the lottery is a dream, being a rock star is a dream, being a professional F1 driver is going to dream. But no matter how hard you work at it, chances are pretty good that you're not going to get an NHL contract and make $6 million a year. No matter how good you are, harder you work at it, most people don't do it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that is about to be what it's like for home ownership,
Mm-hmm.
for raising your kids in a home that they can't necessarily be kicked out of because you had a bad month.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what in the fuck are we doing to ourselves to allow this? In most times of human history, this would have been enough for like a real full blown revolution, like topple the
Well,
goddamn government.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but it's getting so bad that like
No,
I don't know what else to
I
say.
agree. I mean, I'll have to have you on another day because we have another one that Sean and I are working on, which is getting more a little bit into the weeds of the problems that I see, and talking about potential solutions. This podcast is focused on the problems and the reality. And
Yeah.
everybody that I talk to in this space, in this low income space, really, it just makes me realize even more every episode that the problems are worse and the help isn't there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, there are people trying, but it's hard. It's hard to get the funding. It's hard to work through the red tape. The problems are getting worse. You know, the the wealth divide is getting much worse. You know, and the thing that I love about the landlords is, you know, had the government not given a basic income to every single person that needed it for 15 months, the landlords would be bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
But our tax dollars went in to serve. They made record profits because they had the most stable rent supply they've ever had in their entire life because everybody was paying it.
Yep.
And they made record profits and didn't give a cent back.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when like that should be all of the evidence anyone needs to know that the trickle up economy is what it is. When CERB came out, they didn't give well, they did give a bunch of money to wealthy business owners, but they gave the checks out to the people who needed it the most. In whether how effective that was is up for debate. But they didn't give $1,200 checks to everybody. They gave them to the people who are really, really in the most desperate solutions because they knew that money would go directly back into the economy and up it goes, and it just
Of
ends
course.
up in the
I mean,
right. But
you spend it. If you don't have anything, it's not like you're saving. You're spending it to survive.
Yeah, you want to drive an economy, you get the lowest people spending money.
100%. Well, I mean, I could go on. I'm so happy that we got to chat today. I could go on with this for you for hours, and I would like to have you on again. We'll BS about some other stuff. We can get into the weeds a little bit more on this other podcast, but for now, I think we'll shut it off there because otherwise we'll go on rant around for the rest of the day.
Yeah, well, listen, hey, it's been a real pleasure seeing you again and talking to you, and thank you very much for the invitation and the chance to, you know, I love the sound of my own voice, so that's always a good good thing for me.
Perfect. I hate the sound of mine, but
no, I actually do hate it when I hear it recorded, but I get once I get yakking, it just doesn't stop. I don't know why, but anyway, you know. All the best, lots of love. I'm super glad to be sitting here, a different person than when you knew me.
Well, I mean, no, we had some great times.
We did. There was all sorts of great times along the way there, but sure. Anyway, I'm really, really, really. I just have so much gratitude to be in the position to even be asked to be here today, and you know. And so thank you for that. And, you know, best luck and best wishes. And anytime you want me to yak away, I'm happy to do it.
Sounds good, buddy. Love it.
Okay.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.